Mortal Kombat 11, Samurai Shodown, and Power Rangers are the three that I'll put into consideration for 2019 fighting games. And not older fighting games, no expansions, so no Tekken Season 3, no expansions to older fighting games like Smash Brothers. Smash Brothers was last year, stuff like that. The game had to be released and was made in the year of our Lord, 2019. And I think we should start with Sam Show. So, funny enough, Samurai Shodown is the exact opposite of what I really enjoy about fighting games. It's a slow, methodical, grounded-based fighting game that in some other ways, the genres that try to execute that, to me, generally can end up being kind of uninteresting. However, Samurai Shodown is designed by veteran fighting game designers. People have been doing this shit for 20 years, responsible for some of the biggest and bestest and most celebrated fighting games of all time. So what do? Knowing that they're gonna have a slow, methodical, grounded-based fighting game. They counter that with an extreme, which is extremely high damage. The game is scary as hell because things are elevated because of an extremely, in my opinion, important notion when it comes to fighting games: high risk, high reward. Samurai Shodown is all about big risk and big reward. And I think it does it really well. I don't think that there isn't any room for improvement. I think there definitely is room for improvement with future Samurai Shodown characters, expansions, and whatnot. I think there's definitely a future for this game. And I'm actually still waiting on the PC version to eventually jump back into it, because the one thing that was obviously lacking in Sam Show, that is the most painful of them all, is the fact that its online was not very good. It was difficult to find good connections. It was difficult to find matches fast. And it's the most painful aspect of Sam Show. Well, it ended up being a ton of fun. Yes, you did feel like you learned what mostly a character can do relatively fast, and it's all about, it's all about just landing those hits, which is a big part of, like, even the majority of SF5 and games like MK11. But Sam Show had this element of like, oh, fuck, like, oh my God. You land that giant hit or you get hit by that giant hit, it's like the most heart-wrenching feeling when that shit actually finds its target. And I think that's a good design decision, and I think it's also something that shows their prowess. The fact that some of these dudes at SNK are the ones that absolutely know what it takes to make a really engaging fighting game. I think Sam Show is also a good-looking game. I don't think it's incredible. I don't think it's a ridiculously, like, gorgeous game. That's why I'm kind of waiting for the PC version. But I think they did a good job. I think its art style is the most reminiscent of a game like Street Fighter 4. And that's a good safe bet, because this is rebooting a franchise from 2D to 3D, just like, Street Fighter 4 did. Oh, is this I think this might be the result of an extremely high risk associated with an extremely high reward. And it feels amazing. It feels ridiculously amazing. And then you get him to jump, and then that's it. Yeah, there's something about, like, Sam Show that's just ridiculously satisfying. Like, I love it. It's fun as hell. The problem was the online, man. Like, it became, as soon as I started, like, whittling down the ranks, and then you get to higher ranks, and you start only fighting people that are good, and then you get some matches that are fun because you like being challenged, but the challenge usually ends up being the online and less about you understanding the matchup, and that's the part where you're like, well, I can get good at this, it'll just take a very long time, and that's when it's painful, dude. That's when it becomes really painful. And even for people that still continue to play a lot of Samurai Shodown to this day, a lot of people just sort of dropped off because the online just made it very difficult to keep up. You would think that in a game that is very slow and methodical and paced like this one, that, oh, it might be okay in a delay-based netcode that isn't, the most pristine. When in fact, when you have a game where you don't have a lot at your disposal, The netcode needs to be actually the most pristine, because you have so many limited tools that you need to make those tools work, and they need to function at the right time, you know? So it's almost in every situation, a fighting game needs to have good online to replicate that experience of having it feel good. The game not being out on PC, it's taken a little while. I really like Sam Show, and I think it's a very, very, very good rendition of what they could have done for this series, and they could have definitely messed it up, because a lot of people forget that games like Samurai Shodown Sen do exist, and it was a little rough. A lot rough. But this game nailed the art style, it nailed the gore, it nailed everything that made Samurai Shodown very special when it came out. And I think that's fantastic, man. Just absolutely, they killed it. Outside of the netcode. My second nomination for Fighting Game of 2019, Best Fighting Game of 2019, goes to Power Rangers Battle for the Grid. Admittedly, I am not a big Power Rangers fan. I'm just not. Power Rangers I always thought was just a part of famous media that was like right behind me in terms of like my age range. And for some reason, it never resonated. It always seemed like Power Rangers was more for younger kids when I was a kid. Because I think by this time, like Power Rangers was a big thing. I might have been maybe 10 or 11. Maybe 12. I can't even tell you. And by that time, I was already into aliens and predators. Long story short, all it led me to was not being a big fan of Power Rangers. However, I do like it when fighting games are made out of giant franchises. When they take things like Dragon Ball, when they take things like Power Rangers, and we're gonna make a fighting game out of it. Now this game chooses to make a fighting game out of Power Rangers, and they're going to make it like a Versus series game. They're gonna make it like a Marvel versus Capcom, spiritually and mechanically. So I really appreciate it when fighting games take these like big risks. The funny thing is that there's been a few fighting games that have come out over the past few years that are tag based, but they don't have a huge roster. Like the whole point of a tag based fighting game, much less a 3v3 game, is that they have a lot of characters to work with. And even a 3v3 fighting game like Dragon Ball or Power Rangers, they don't have a big roster to work with, but they still go on with a 3 versus 3 tag team fighting game. But the funny thing is they still manage to make it work. Like Dragon Ball is still growing to this day. People are still finding new stuff. And Power Rangers, even with its limited roster at the start, the mechanics were enough to make it kind of crazy and engaging. And that's the part that I think Power Rangers really deserves. Although the launch of this game was extremely rough, there was a lot of very kind of nutty gameplay bugs. The graphics were not nearly as good as even what you're seeing right now, and a lot of the game lacked a bit of the polish because it seemed like that it was made with a very, very, very small amount of time. And even with all those detriments against it, there was something about the gameplay. There was something about the way that Power Rangers Battle for the Grid just felt, and how many possibilities you had with the game. In an era that we're in right now where so many fighting games are like limiting the mechanics and going for slower, more methodical sort of gameplay, Power Rangers was just like, we're not gonna go for the casual level of entry, try to reach our audience, and everyone at every age range can play our game and be the best at it. They designed it like it's just a video game. They designed it with the idea that we're just gonna make our system mechanics in the game present a lot of situations. All the special moves in the game are super easy. They're literally forward, down, and back with a special button. Nothing in this game is hard to do on an execution level until you dig deeper. And mostly the execution comes from no shit brain power. Just realizing what you're capable of and going crazy with it. And that's where my quote, my very famous quote from earlier this year when they first showed the gameplay of this game was, this is a motherfucking fighting game, man. Like, you see people that are going to be good at this in a year, and it's going to be like, holy shit, this is nuts. Shit, this game is crazy, dude. Oh my god. And it felt like it had been such a long time since I've kind of saw that. It'd been a little while in a few years of fighting game releases. Probably since like Marvel Infinite, maybe even BlazBlue Cross Tag, that we had been waiting for a fighting game to be kind of insane and nutty. So what I do really love about Battle for the Grid is that it gave me the feels of a Marvel vs. Capcom game, and much less it gave me the feels of the gameplay aspects of Marvel Infinite. It actually got me a little bit in my heart of hearts that I've been looking for with fighting games for a very long time. And Power Rangers Battle for the Grid did it, regardless of how goofy it looks, regardless of how little content there was at the start of the game. They added like crazy to it over the years. And that's why over the months. And that's why I definitely consider it to be one of the best fighting games of 2019. So Mortal Kombat 11 obviously has to be a contender for fighting game of the year. This was easily the biggest fighting game release of this year. And what's even crazier is that a year ago, we almost didn't even know there was going to be another Mortal Kombat. We thought they were going to be waiting for next gen or something. But they didn't. It was just a late reveal. And there was so much of this game is so promising, right? So much of it, between how much content there was, the story mode, which I ended up really liking, the online just getting better and better and better. Oh, we forgot to mention that Power Rangers also had really good online too. Power Rangers definitely gets a consideration because their online was good. MK11 had good online because MKX had good online once it got fixed, and Justice 2 had good online. But there was a big moment at the beginning of MK11 that was rough, and that was the realization of the unlock system. They did fix it over time, and that was the big thing that we realized when the game came out. The one thing that definitely triggered like a warning in me was when we first got to play the game. And we first got to play it in the January of 2019, the first time any public got a chance to play it. And within about 30 minutes, I was searching for more things that the characters could do, and I wasn't finding much. And I was sort of trying to find other people that were doing really sick shit or discovering stuff in MK11, and I knew it was going to be there. It was obvious that there was going to be things that you'd be able to figure out, some crazy execution, some really, nutty thing that a character could do in the corner, much less, in a very specific like counter hit situation. I got it. Flawless blocking is impressive, but it's not visually impressive. Flawless blocking is harder to do than a parry, but a flawless block doesn't look cool. You know what I mean? It's like fighting games are about like the direct feel relation to how badass something is to do, how difficult it is to do, and then the visual / auditory response that comes through on the opposite end. And to me, a flawless block doesn't look cool or give you that. It kind of has like, oh, I got you for attacking me feel. But unlike a parry in like, which is the most thing I can actually compare it to, a just defend or a parry, it doesn't have a special animation. It just has like, your character just flashes a little bit. Parries look cool. At least when you just defend something, it makes a big loud sound. And there's like an immediate, like reaction to payoff. I think that's a big thing that's lacking with flawless block in this game, is that it doesn't feel great to land, other than the fact that you now have a chance to hit your opponent back with an up 2 or an up 3, like that's what you get, is the winning the fight instead of the feeling of it being awesome, right? The feeling of it being something that's really cool. I still think MK11 is a fun game. I don't think MK11 is a bad fighting game by any means. It just is. It clearly has a bit of design intent, where the characters are designed for you to play it in a very specific way. And to me, fighting games, like the number one thing that a lot of people think of when it comes down to, does your fighting game need to be like sick? It's got to have combos. Everyone boils it down to combos. To me, the moment-to-moment interaction has to have like decision making. You have to be presented with a moment where you have to like make this choice. If the combos are easy, then you have to be making a lot of choices. And that even happened to me recently with Street Fighter V. You know, I was playing Gil, and Street Fighter V and Gil, you have to make choices because you have to choose which path am I at? Am I close to the corner? Do I want to go into the ice move or the pirate like that? Like, oh wow, this is something this game doesn't normally do. This is actually very fun. This is an aspect of the game that not every character is presented with. MKX, while its combos weren't that much more difficult, it definitely had that, where there was a bit of these choices you had to make between your character, these choices between Oki, your choices between this and that. And there are aspects of that here, but there's just something about you should always be sort of playing the character this way. But yeah, I think there's a lot to really love about this game. It's just on a personal level, MK11 didn't hit the notes that I felt MKX kind of did, which is to make it kind of a really exciting fighting game. There's just some stuff that I find to be kind of exciting about MKX, and that's not just between roster, that's the overall sort of unga-bunga nature of the game, and how everything is so damn threatening in that game that there's definitely a risk-reward to stuff. So while I think it's a great fighting game, would I give it my personal, and I think it deserves to be fighting game, one of the best fighting games of this year, because it has a lot of things that it does do right, and it is the highest, like it is the biggest production fighting game out there, you know? MK11 is, there's no games that are bigger than it. There's no games that are bigger than it. NRS games are the biggest, most AAA fighting games in the world. Not a Street Fighter, not a Tekken, none of those games that come out, not an Arc System Works games, like have the budget of a game like this, and how much they put into everything outside of the fighting as well. It just didn't grab me. Like there's so much about MK11 that should just hook the shit out of you, as I watch myself playing with Noob Saibot, that should just hook the shit out of you. The production value is insane. It came out on every system, but something about the game after that first month and a half, when I played the shit out of it, when I played a whole bunch of it, just didn't eventually grab me. And it's one of those games that now I'll come back and check out when some characters come out. When Arnold shows up, or especially when Spawn or the Joker show up, I want to check them out and see what they're like. Be surprised by how much fun Sindel is to play. But not a game that I'm really like excited to get good in. There's some fighting games that I just really want to get good at, and MKX was definitely one of them. I really enjoyed MKX and wanted to learn a lot of characters. I didn't get that feeling from either Injustice 2 or MK11. But it won't have me saying anything really bad about the game, because I feel that this game does service a part of the fighting game crowd, like I said earlier, that doesn't want to have to work their ass off to be good at a fighting game. Like, this game absolutely has that aspect. I don't want to work my ass off to be okay with a character in this game. Spend 30 minutes, figure out some hella optimal shit, or close to optimal shit with a character in MK11, and then jump online and just be pretty good at it pretty fast. And that's a big divide, because it comes it comes at the expense of the game looking very impressive to play, right? It comes at the expense of people that like watching fighting games or just enjoy watching fighting games just having a bit of a disconnect with MK11 and getting thrown around all the time. So I think it is a good fighting game, because it does submit to a crowd that isn't used to the fighting game audience, which obviously MK11 has the biggest audience. You enjoy MK11 because you're more of a casual player. That makes a lot of sense. So overall, MK11 was easily the biggest game of 2019 fighting game-wise. Samurai Shodown was a resurrection of a fighting game that had not been around for a long time, done very well, with a not-so-functional full version of the game. And then Power Rangers came out as the big tag team fighting game of the year. In my opinion, had the most engaging gameplay, but probably the weakest visuals and the smallest game of them all. But they eventually expanded that to make a much bigger game. So between the three games, the three top fighting games of 2019, I think I would give it to... I think the third spot, number 3, is Mortal Kombat 11. And I think it absolutely deserves to be a top fighting game of the year. Absolutely. I think the second spot goes to Samurai Shodown just because it all boils back down to gameplay. And the feelings I got when playing Samurai Shodown, the visual and auditory response of Samurai Shodown really made me like, ooh, that hurt. Like, actually gave me emotional reactions to stuff in ways that I really enjoy fighting games to do. But that lacking online definitely keeps it from being number 1. However, Power Rangers is my nomination for Best Fighting Game of 2019. And it comes down to something very specific. Power Rangers wins it for me because of gameplay. Really does. For me, playing every character in Power Rangers that I did play was interesting and engaging. It had mechanics that made me feel like I was having fun with every single character, every single time I came back. I don't even like Power Rangers, but a fun game is an extremely fun game. And it's going to... I'm gonna hear it for years to come that big streamer YouTuber guy chose that little shitty Power Rangers game over the big production Mortal Kombat. Chose that Power Rangers game over that Jump Force game. Jump Force was so good. How could he not pick that? But I could say confidently this game was easily one of my favorite games this year. Just in general. I'm looking forward to playing it again. It's got good netcode. It actually has good netcode. It runs great online. I'm one of the worst influencers ever. Shit. We confirmed earlier that I'm a terrible variety streamer, and I'm possibly one of the worst influencers of all time if I don't like the big AAA fighting games and I don't choose them to be the best. Power Rangers is really fun. It's really fun. And it does things tag-wise that no other tag team game has really done. And they did it well. Is it the most polished game of all time? Is it the most visually splendorous? Is it got the biggest roster? Is it got the greatest characters? No. I don't even think any of that is specifically true. But what it has is... it's gonna sound cheesy, but what it has is imagination. Every single time I played a character, it led me to moments where I was just like, can I do that? Maybe I could do this. Oh God, maybe I could do that. Somebody send me a combo video. I tried this, look what I found! Like... those moments of discovery are, to me, the reason what makes fighting games fun for me. Those moments of discovering what's possible. Instead of things feeling like overly designed that discovery should not be a priority. This game we're just like, you know what? You can discover whatever you want. Did it lead to an absolutely busted game? Yes. This game, for almost every single version that came out, super busted. Characters had infinites, characters had overpowered moves, like things were just notoriously kind of whack in some situations. But it didn't take away from the fact that the game was extremely fun. And it felt like it had enough polish in the ways that allowed me to be creative, like I'm playing a video game. Like I'm learning, I'm discovering. I feel like there's moments that I haven't even been able to grasp what this game has given me the capable tools of. And is any of it difficult? It's not. Everything in this game is easier to do than almost any other versus game out there. It's easier to do than any other of the Marvel vs. Capcom games that came before it. However, because of that, its system mechanics allow you to constantly be stretching your brain. Where should I? I didn't even think of doing that. What the hell? I didn't even think of playing the character that way. We were playing the character all wrong. To me, that's like the sweet spot of a fighting game. I appreciate that about fighting games. And Power Rangers, similar to games like Marvel Infinite, similar to other games in the Versus series, tend to stretch your imagination of what's possible with these characters in this system. And I love that about it. That's why Power Rangers Battle for the Grid is my favorite fighting game of 2019, and I'm extremely happy to admit that. And I've loved every moment I've had playing this game. It's so good. It's so much fun.